Under the amber glow of a July evening in 2025, as the sun dipped below the horizon of ancient Alexandria, I stood before a weathered stone archway, half buried in the sands of time. The air was heavy with the weight of history. The faint hum of the Mediterranean breeze carried whispers of stories long silenced. My name is Elias Moro, a historian of religion, a seeker of truths buried beneath layers of dogma and centuries of selective curation. For decades, I have pursued the shadows of forgotten text manuscripts deemed too dangerous, too radical, or too inconvenient to be included in the sacred canons of the world's great religions. Tonight, I stood on the threshold of a discovery that could reshape everything I thought. I knew about humanity's spiritual heritage. This is not merely a tale of dusty scrolls or crumbling parchment. It is a journey into the heart of human belief, a reckoning with the forces that shaped what we call sacred, and a meditation on what it means to seek truth in a world that often prefers comforting lies. The texts I speak of, hidden gospels, forbidden apocalypses, esoteric treatises, were once revered, debated, and cherished by communities of faith. Yet they were cast aside, labeled heretical, or simply forgotten. Why? Who decided their fate? And what do these lost voices have to say to us in the modern age? Join me as we unravel the mystery of the Forgotten Scrolls, a story that spans centuries, continents, and the very soul of humanity. It began with a cryptic message, delivered not by post or email, but by an anonymous courier who vanished into the crowded streets of Cairo. A single sheet of paper, meticulously folded, bore an invitation to a site near the ruins of the ancient library of Alexandria. The note spoke of a hidden chamber, untouched for nearly 2 millennia, containing texts deliberately concealed from the world. As a scholar of ancient religious manuscripts, I had heard such rumors before: tales of lost gospels buried in desert caves, or secret codices hidden in monastic vaults. Most were myths, the fevered dreams of treasure hunters. But this note was different. It included precise coordinates, a reference to a 2nd century Christian sect known as the Scythians, and a phrase in Coptic: "The truth lies in the shadow of the flame." I arrived at the site under the cover of night, accompanied by a small team of trusted colleagues: Dr. Amina Khalil, an expert in Coptic manuscripts, and Professor Marcus Way, a specialist in Gnostic traditions. The coordinates led us to a nondescript mound, barely distinguishable from the surrounding dunes. Guided by ground-penetrating radar, we uncovered a stone slab etched with symbols, a cross entwined with a serpent, a hallmark of early Gnostic communities. Beneath it, a narrow staircase descended into darkness. The chamber we found was small, but meticulously preserved, its walls lined with clay jars, sealed with wax. Inside were scrolls and codices, written in Greek, Coptic, and Aramaic, their pages brittle but legible. As we carefully opened the first jar, I felt a shiver of awe. They were voices from a forgotten past, crying out to be heard. Over the next weeks, we cataloged the texts, which included fragments of a Gospel of Mary Magdalene, a Scythian book of Revelations, a collection of Zoroastrian hymns, and a mysterious treatise titled The Discourse of the Hidden Light. Each text was a window into a world of belief that had been erased from history: the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. One of the most compelling finds offered a vision of early Christianity that was both familiar and startlingly different. Written in Coptic, it portrayed Mary as a central figure among the apostles, a confidant of Jesus who received secret teachings about the nature of the soul and the cosmos. Unlike the canonical Gospels, which emphasized Jesus' death and resurrection, this text focused on spiritual liberation through inner knowledge, or gnosis. In one passage, Mary recounts a vision in which Jesus describes the soul's ascent through celestial realms, overcoming the powers of ignorance and desire. The text's emphasis on personal enlightenment over institutional authority likely made it a target for early church leaders, who sought to unify Christian doctrine under a single narrative. The Scythian Book of Revelations was equally provocative. This apocalyptic text, attributed to the followers of Seth, believed by some early Christians to be a divine figure. It described a cosmic battle between light and darkness. with humanity's salvation hinging on the awakening of divine wisdom within. Unlike the book of Revelation in the New Testament, which is filled with vivid imagery of judgment and divine wrath, this text spoke of a quiet, inward transformation. Its rejection of hierarchical structures and its esoteric tone may have alarmed early church authorities, who favored texts that reinforced their control. The Zoroastrian hymns, written in an ancient dialect of Avestan, were a surprise. These poetic compositions praised the dual forces of creation and destruction, personified as Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. They spoke of a moral universe where human choices shaped the balance between good and evil, a concept that resonated with early Christian and Jewish thought, but was deemed too syncretic for inclusion in Orthodox canons. Their presence in the chamber suggested a cross-pollination of religious ideas. A testament to the cosmopolitan nature of Alexandria in its heyday, the Discourse of the Hidden Light was perhaps the most enigmatic. Written in Aramaic, it appeared to be a synthesis of Jewish, Christian, and Platonic ideas, describing a divine spark within every human that could be awakened through contemplation and ethical living. Its author, unknown, claimed to have received this knowledge from a messenger of light, a figure that echoed both the angelic visitations of Jewish tradition and the revelatory experiences of Gnostic mystics. The text's universalist tone, its insistence that all people, regardless of creed, could access divine truth, likely made it a threat to religious authorities who sought to define clear boundaries of orthodoxy. As we studied the texts, the question loomed large. Why were these writings excluded from the sacred canons? The answer lies in the complex interplay of power, theology, and culture in the ancient world. In the early centuries of Christianity, for example, the Church faced the daunting task of unifying a diverse and often fractious movement. By the 4th century, under the influence of Emperor Constantine and the Council of Nicaea, Christian leaders sought to standardize doctrine, creating a cohesive narrative that would bind the faithful together. Texts like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, with its emphasis on individual revelation, posed a challenge to this project. They suggested a Christianity where authority rested not with bishops or priests, but with the individual seeker, a notion that was both revolutionary and dangerous. The Sethian texts, their esoteric cosmology, were similarly problematic. Their focus on secret knowledge and their rejection of material creation as inherently flawed clashed with the emerging orthodox view of a good creation redeemed by Christ's sacrifice. Labeling such texts as heretical allowed church leaders to marginalize dissenting voices, ensuring a unified message that could be controlled and disseminated. The Zoroastrian hymns and the Discourse of the Hidden Light faced a different fate. Their syncretic nature-blending elements of multiple religious traditions made them suspect, in an era when religious identity was increasingly tied to exclusivity, as Judaism, Christianity, and later Islam defined their boundaries. Texts that blurred those lines were often suppressed or destroyed. The Library of Alexandria, once a beacon of intellectual freedom, became a battleground for such ideological conflicts. When it was sacked in the late 3rd century, many such texts were lost, not by accident, but by design. Yet the act of hiding these texts suggests a deeper motivation. The chamber we discovered was not a random cache, but a deliberate archive, created by those who believed these writings held truths too precious to be lost. Were they Gnostics, fleeing persecution? Were they scholars, preserving knowledge in the face of destruction? Or were they simply believers, convinced that these texts contained a spark of divine wisdom that deserved to endure? The serpent cross, symbol on the chamber's entrance, hinted at a Gnostic influence. But the presence of Zoroastrian and Jewish elements suggested a broader, more inclusive vision of spirituality. The significance of these texts extends far beyond their historical context. Culturally, they reveal a world of vibrant intellectual exchange, where ideas from East and West mingled freely. Alexandria, in its prime, was a melting pot of Greek philosophy, Jewish mysticism, Persian dualism, and early Christian thought. These texts are artifacts of that dialogue, proof that humanity has long grappled with questions of meaning, identity, and the divine. They challenge the modern assumption that religious traditions were always rigid and insular, showing instead a fluidity that allowed for creativity and adaptation. Spiritually, these texts offer a radical vision of the human condition. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene invites us to see ourselves not as mere sinners in need of salvation, but as bearers of a divine spark, capable of transcending the limitations of the material world. The Sethian Book of Revelations calls us to awaken to our inner wisdom, to see the world not as a place of judgment, but as a stage for transformation. The Zoroastrian hymns remind us of our responsibility to choose between light and darkness, a moral imperative that resonates across cultures and epochs. And the discourse of the hidden light speaks to a universal longing for connection with the divine, a yearning that transcends religious boundaries. In 2025, as humanity stands at the crossroads of technological advancement and spiritual searching, these forgotten texts are more relevant than ever. We live in an age of information overload, where competing narratives vie for our attention. Yet the questions they raise about the nature of the divine, the purpose of life, and the path to true freedom are timeless. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, with its emphasis on inner knowledge, speaks to a generation seeking authenticity in a world of superficiality. The Sethian Book of Revelations, with its call to awaken, resonates with those who feel trapped in cycles of materialism and despair. The Zoroastrian hymns, with their focus on moral choice, challenge us to take responsibility for the world we create, and the discourse of the hidden light offers hope to those who feel disconnected. Cultural and political shape our understanding of truth. They force us to grapple with the cost of orthodoxy, the price paid by those whose voices were silenced. In a world where division and polarization are rampant, these texts call us to embrace a more inclusive vision of spirituality, one that honors the diversity of human experience while seeking the universal truths that bind us together as we prepare to share our findings with the world. A new question emerged. Should these texts be revealed? The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1940s and the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945 sparked intense debate, with some arguing that such texts could destabilize faith or fuel division. Our chamber, with its eclectic mix of Christian, Gnostic, Zoroastrian, and Jewish writings, posed a similar dilemma. Would their publication deepen our understanding of the past, or would it ignite controversy, feeding the flames of religious conflict? I wrestled with this question late into the night, my mind haunted by the faces of those who might read these texts. Would a young woman, reading the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, find empowerment in its vision of a female apostle? Would a scholar, poring over the discourse of the hidden light, discover a new framework for interfaith dialogue? Or would these texts be weaponized, twisted to serve agendas of division and exclusion? In the end, I concluded that truth, however, uncomfortable, must be shared. To hide them would be to betray the very people who preserved them, who believed that their words could light the way for future generations. As I stand before you now, sharing this story, I invite you to join me in this journey. The Forgotten Scrolls are more than relics of a bygone era. They're mirrors reflecting our own struggles, hopes, and questions. They challenge us to look beyond the surface, to seek the hidden truths that lie beneath the narratives we've been given. They remind us that faith is not a static dogma, but a living. Casting its golden light on the ancient ruins, I feel a sense of hope. The forgotten scrolls, once buried in darkness, are now poised to shine again. And above all, they remind us that the divine is not confined to the pages of a book or the walls of a temple. It lives in the hearts of those who dare to seek it. This is the story of the Forgotten Scrolls. May it be the beginning of a new chapter in our shared journey toward truth.